everyone, I'm Moa aka Swedish Whiskey Girl, and today we're going to try some Australian whiskey. So this video is going to focus on the Melbourne distillery of Starward, and they are a distillery that started up I believe in 2007 with their first release in 2013. They tend to use a lot of Australian wine barrels, which is really interesting, and I love how they kind of say that they want to make whiskey that's been matured for at least 3 Melbourne years. Of course, the climate in Melbourne is a little bit different to, for example, in Scotland. So you do tend to get a different sort of maturation in these different climates. And they also tend to use smaller casks, between 50 to 200 litre casks, because of course the more oak contact the spirit has, the more flavour you can extract. So it's a very interesting distillery, I think. And of course they're quite known for having 4 seasons in one day and a really dry climate, which means that when you fill the casks, you will get an angel share that actually takes more of the water than the alcohol, so you'll get an increase in the ABV. So they actually have a lower filling strength at 55% because of that reason. But due to this kind of crazy weather, they also lose a lot more than you would, for example, in Scotland. They lose on average about 5 to 6% every year, but some years it could even be up to 10%, which is absolutely crazy. Another interesting thing is that because they have such a fluctuation in their weather and climate, they have jacketed necks on the stills to control the reflux and be able to kind of control the consistency year round. But they can also experiment and do little small batches as well. And they do, of course, have an experimental series with really curious expressions. One that I've actually managed to try is the ginger beer cask. It's definitely ginger beer that's coming through on it. It's so interesting, and if you get a chance to try it, that is such an interesting one. And the wine casks that they use, they tend to vary in age, so sometimes they've been used between 4 to 7 years by the winery, and they tend to be both American and French oak. And something that's really interesting is that they don't always rechar these wine barrels. Sometimes they wet fill them, which means that you get them straight from the winery and then you fill them with your whiskey straight away. But the expressions we're going to try is the Solera, the Nova and the Twofold today. So it's going to be really interesting to compare them, and I've not actually previously tried them, so I'm very excited to see what they're like. But let's start with the Solera, which was their first expression released in 2013. So the Solera has been matured on Apera casks. I'm not really sure how you say it, but it's basically the Australian version of sherry. But because it's not from Spain, from the region of Jerez, you can't actually call it sherry. So it's the equivalent, but in Australia and from Australia. So it's quite nice that they're using these kind of local different spirits and local culture and get it into the whiskey. And these casks are all 100% charred, and the whiskey is between 3 to 7 years old. So this Solera whiskey, it sits at 43% ABV, and it's gotten its name after the Solera system, but Starward's kind of taken their own spin on this maturing system. So it's a little bit similar to how you would mature sherry in these Solera systems, but not just quite, which I think is really interesting. But let's have a little nose. It feels very tropical on the first nose. Quite dense and heavy. It smells very chocolatey, like cocoa, like raw cocoa. Maybe a little bit of coffee in there as well. It definitely would remind you of something like a sherried style of whiskey. It almost has this lovely kind of banana bread note as well. So like banana bread, cocoa and coffee. Let's have a taste. Slunge that. Immediately I get this kind of charry sooty note, but still quite chocolatey and like a bit of that tropical fruit that would be like an apricot. But definitely that finish, it feels very kind of charry and like a little bit sooty. Still quite easygoing. A little bit of that kind of ginger or like cinnamon spice. So slightly prickly, but also slightly drying. A lot of flavour. Definitely a little bit of that raisin sweetness coming through as well. Very rich in its flavours, but it's still quite easygoing and like approachable. Interesting. Well, we're going to compare this to the other two. So next is their second release. I think it was first released in 2015, and it's the Nova. So the Nova sits at 41% ABV and it's been matured on Australian red wine casks that I believe are Shiraz, Pinot Noir, and Cabernet Sauvignon. And 60% of these wine casks are used. They've been wet filled, meaning that they've simply just emptied them, done a little quick sterilization, like a jet stream clean, and then you go straight in with the new make, so you don't do any recharring. It's been matured for 3 to 4 years, and they said that this is the as approachable perhaps, just kind of easygoing and just like friendly and approachable. And it's 40% single malt and 60% wheat whiskey in this blend. And a big part of the maturation has been done on red wine casks, but they've also used some American oak and some French oak in here. And they call this a double grain, so you use both malted barley and wheat. And this one sits at 40% ABV. But let's have a little nose. Very easy going on the nose. You do get that kind of grain element, like that kind of clean, sweet note. Still quite fruity, but very kind of toned down. It's almost like the other ones are slightly bigger and more easy to kind of pick out aromas. It smells intriguing, but it's so clean and sweet that it's hard to pick out anything else. So let's have a taste. Cheers! It's very easygoing. It has this, I think it's the wheat influence, but it has a grain whiskey-esque tone, but not quite grain whiskey. It's slightly different and slightly more drying and slightly more almost like doughy. It's like when you make, for example, like chocolate chip cookies and you eat a bit of the dough, you can almost feel this drying sensation in your mouth and also this flavour of the raw dough. That's what I'm getting on the palate, but it's also very fruity. This one's more drying on the palate. Definitely very crisp and clean note. It's very sweet. I could see this going really well with barbecue because that kind of meaty, like when you have a barbecue sauce or something, you just want like a nice. I think the drying sensation alongside the sweetness would go really well with food. So I can definitely see what they've done. If I had to pick, I would probably say the Nova is my favourite today. It's just so fruity and easygoing and that kind of wine influence. Very yummy. I mean, these are three really lovely whiskies. I would definitely drink these, and it's really fun because they've made this brand as an Australian whiskey that's supposed to be approachable and also quite affordable, and some of the prices for these whiskies are really, really good. And of course, if you're looking to pick up a bottle, I would of course be so happy if you would consider using my affiliate link with Master of Malt, and you can find the information in the link in the description. But I would of course love to hear if you've tried any of the Starward whiskies. Have you tried the Solera, the Nova, or the Twofold perhaps? Or is there another expression like the ginger beer one that you've tried? If you want to find me on other channels, I'm available of course on my Instagram and Patreon. You can find that information in the description. And of course a massive thank you to my wonderful Patreons who keep supporting me. It is so appreciated, and I'm so happy you want to be part of my little community. But as always, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Stan